I am Wole Soyinka, standing on that same Nigerian soil where 40 years ago, what was perhaps the first full-blown civil war in post-colonial Africa took place. Following the first ever Nigerian military coup in January 1966 and its counter-coup in May, a young northern officer from a minority Christian group, Yakubu Gowon, ended up as Nigeria's new head of state. The discovery of oil in huge reserves in the east played a role in the propulsion of the Biafran leaders towards secession. But it was not just the lure of oil wealth that drove the Igbo as a people to seek a separate existence, led by Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, then military governor of the eastern region. The prospect of war between the East and the Federation loomed larger every day, propelled by statements from Ojukwu which pointed the way to the breakup of Nigeria.
We have reached a stage where I am unalterably convinced that to save the very semblance of Nigeria as one country, we must drift a little apart. Call it confederation or a loose association or whatever you will. It is the only way for survival, not only for ourselves, but also for the country.
Ojukwu declared an independent state of Biafra on May 30th, 1967. I was in London with fellow Nigerians. We decided that someone had to go to the east to talk with Ojukwu, a dangerous mission as it was difficult for a non-Biafran to enter the now xenophobic entity called Biafra. But I volunteered to go, to make the journey first from Lagos to the Midwest, separated from the seceded state by the River Niger, then across into Biafra itself and the center of power in Enugu. I made that journey, and today I am retracing my steps, going back to see Odumegwu Ojukwu again after 40 years. The first stage takes me to the border of Biafra, the River Niger, at Asaba. For this return journey to the former state of Biafra, my ultimate destination remained the same: to meet and speak with the secessionist leader, Odumegwu Ojukwu. This time, however, I also planned to meet with representatives of the younger generation who have refused to abandon the dream of Biafra. These have organized themselves into a movement known as MASOB, Movement for the Actualization of the Sovereign State of Biafra. Meeting their leaders did not prove quite as easy as was earlier promised. They had gone underground, following information that military and police action against them was imminent. First, though, a chance to speak again with Odumegwu Ojukwu, the leader I came to meet 40 years ago. With failing eyesight, he is still as passionate as ever about the cause, and he can remember the day I arrived in 1967.
My immediate feeling was that, my God, Wole's done it again. He's come in. He doesn't know what problem he's got me into, because I needed to protect you. You were Yoruba. You're coming in. People had to decide, do they embrace you or hit you across the head? I was worried. I thought they might hit you. But actually, you're very lucky.
I counted on the fact of human curiosity. And somebody deliberately came into what was supposed to be an enemy enclave. I was quite confident that I would get to see a responsible person as soon as possible, and I'd get where I was headed. So I had no qualms whatsoever. None.
You had no qualms. I sat on a hot stove wondering what would happen. I found it was the beginning of what I suffered, I went through throughout the war. My own view on many things, quite different actually from the views of the ordinary people. I had to explain that despite what was going on, I still had and considered certain Yorubas as friends.
Ojukwu still holds his position from 1967. I asked him about the decision to secede and how it actually came about.
We, on this side, the eastern side, believe in Nigeria. We have proven that. We've shown it in so many ways. We've developed areas in Nigeria. We have been with Nigerians. We continue to join Nigerians in everything. But there comes a point where if you push us, we say, enough is enough. If that is the price we have to pay for unity, then it's better for us to stand alone. So that decision to secede, as you put it, you don't just sit down, we must secede. No, we didn't do that. But we were aware that there must come a time, if the other side continues along this line, then we have to face that, no matter how unpleasant or pleasant it appears to you. That is the point. We certainly were considering it from the minute the massacres took place. And say how we can live if we're going to be massacred. There are certain things perhaps you might like to remember too. After the first massacre, I was the one that got onto the air and said to the Igbos, please, this is an aberration, go back to the north. I was the one.
I remember, I can't forget that if I was going to come to that. I was going to, and I'll come to it in a minute, because I wanted to ask you if you've ever, you must have revisited that.
Oh yes,
like
all the time.
Lots of time, and just how much anguish this must have caused you, that you actually came out and said, everybody go back, that you belong there in Nigeria.
Yes.
One can't forget that at all. No. So, for the future, can Nigeria survive?
If you want Nigeria, I don't think it's impossible. I don't at all. But you'll just have to train yourselves to really believing the equality of citizenship. If you're not prepared for it, forget Nigeria.
I'm Wole Soyinka on a journey back to Biafra for the BBC World Service.
It will be a great disservice for anyone to continue to use the word Biafra to refer to any part of the East Central state of Nigeria. The tragic chapter of violence is just ended. We are at the dawn of national reconciliation. Once again, we have an opportunity to build a new nation.
Here we are finally outdoors at night with all the night sounds of Enugu.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we're actually at this spot, which is a rather secretive spot, is that the person I'm going to talk to now belongs to an organization which is being hunted by the police. The leader of that organization has been in detention for nearly 2 years. We're talking of MASSOB, by the way, the Movement for the Actualization of Biafra. And I'll ask you directly, what does Biafra mean to you, really?
What it actually means to me is, it is an identity, because my great-grandparents have been identified as Biafrans even before the Portuguese, the British people, and what have you. I mean, the white colonies, before they came down to this place. So what I'm trying to say right now is this. Biafra simply means to me what I am naturally, by my culture, my language, and my God's given right to live as a Biafran.
Does the actualization mean for you secession from the Federation of Nigeria, to which you, at the moment, up till now, belong?
We are talking of Biafra today, and the whole world has been hearing of Biafra. And we claim to be Biafrans, but one thing still remains, the sovereignty. So we cannot claim total freedom for now. But for the fact that we know we are Biafrans, we must keep claiming that till the day the Almighty will say, yes, this is the time for you to be free from your masters, because we are like slaves right now. And of course, you know that. It's like it is a thing that has been going on day in, day out. And it will continue like that till the end, till the day we shall say hooray to the Almighty for giving us our freedom.
I'll be completing my journey with a return to Lagos, where I want to meet the man who put me behind bars for my audacious trip to Biafra. I am Wole Soyinka, standing on that same Nigerian soil where 40 years ago, what was perhaps the first full-blown civil war in post-colonial Africa took place. From Lagos, the coastal city that was then capital of Nigeria, I undertook a visit to the secessionist state of Biafra. Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, once military governor of the then eastern region of Nigeria, had become head of state of the secessionist region. My purpose was to defuse the political standoff that was pushing Nigeria towards civil war. Last week, for the BBC World Service, I retraced my steps back to Biafra to meet Ojukwu again. And in today's program, I'm completing the round trip back to Lagos, where in 1967 the reception was less than welcoming, as the newspaper reports of the day show. The Sunday Post, 29 October 1967. A famous Nigerian playwright, head of drama and lecturer in English of the Lagos University, Mr. Wole Soyinka, has been detained under the emergency regulations. Mr. Soyinka has been ominously connected with espionage activities for the rebel leader Ojukwu against the federal military government. Mr. Soyinka was also said to have admitted in a statement that he came to an arrangement with Mr. Ojukwu to assist in the purchase of jet aircraft to be used by the rebel Air Force. Also on August 9, Mr. Soyinka was at Benin with Colonel Victor Banjo and agreed to help in the overthrow of the government of Western Nigeria. Soyinka further agreed to the consequent overthrow of the federal military government, the commissioner told the press. Now, none of this was true, but it was enough to persuade the leader of the Nigerian Federation, General Yakubu Gowon, to have me thrown in jail. To complete my journey back in time to the events of the Biafran War, I've asked to meet General Gowon, and he has agreed. So, first of all, I want to know what made him decide that I had to be locked up.
The report that came to me, actually, that in the end made me to give the go-ahead for your incarceration. He became my guest. He became my guest for how many is it for about
Total, 2 years and 4 months.
2 years and 4 months. But really, that was done. The report was that, yes, you've been going and meeting with Ojukwu and Banjo. I think if you remember some of the bombing that had taken place on Moloney Street, very near the petrol station, near the police headquarters. Yeah, you remember that. And the one, the cinema in Yaba. And all this was stated to be his handiwork. This rebel rouser, and
you see what evil reputation they give me.
And I said, my goodness. So in fact, we thought the best thing to do is that go and give him a good rest.
The story of the Biafran War can be told through the two main players, General Yakubu Gowon on the Nigerian Federation side, and Odumegwu Ojukwu on the separatist side. For his part, General Gowon rejects any suggestion that he would have willingly embarked on hostilities, and points out that it was the Igbo who felt insecure for reasons he acknowledged were valid.
Let's say this, to start off with, the idea of fighting a war, a civil war in Nigeria, was never one's thought or idea when one became head of state. It was the circumstances of the time and as I said, the belligerence of my brother and colleague Emeka Ojukwu at the time, well, I would give it to him with what had happened in Nigeria at the time, all the unfortunate killings, especially of Igbos in most parts of Nigeria, especially in the north, and the initial political crisis due to the killing of the various political leaders in the north and some of the senior military officers. Now, all these things probably made for the Igbos to feel very unsafe and unsure of being Nigerians, and they would rather probably have a home of their own. But Ojukwu, in the end, despite all the effort that we tried to make to try and resolve the problem, to reassure, I think he had a different idea. Personally, I think he had a different idea. He wanted to really break up and have a home for the Igbos or Easterners, on their own.
For the BBC World Service, both Ojukwu and Gowon reflect on the time that they actually met to try and save the country from descending into chaos and civil war. This was the meeting in Aburi, Ghana, in 1966.
We went indeed to Aburi with two different mindsets. You could even see it in the way we appeared. The Nigerian contingent at Aburi, in front of that Pedrasa lodge, and I saw them there in their flowing robes. And they had become the new Nigerian politicians. I came in jeans and a shirt. Great contrast with my colleagues, that is true. We got in. I had clearly in my mind what I wanted to achieve. I make no bones about it. I wanted greater autonomy for the people of Eastern Nigeria. I am glad that right now, as you and I are talking, we can still summon and get the records of Aburi. And one thing I'm sure will be clear to you, that every word I spoke was chosen to secure for the people of the East, it is Eastern Nigeria, greater autonomy.
The agreement was that when we come back, I'm going to make a statement on what we agreed, to do, and then after that, the number of the other governors will then make their statement. Unfortunately, when I came back, I had a very bad fever, and I could not really do what I could have done on the following day. But meanwhile, Ojukwu, when he arrived back in Enugu, he made a statement virtually trying to commit the rest of us to his idea of the meeting, saying that we've agreed to move apart and we've agreed to confederation and all this sort of thing, which I can assure you that was not the agreement. And of course, it was early hours of the morning that one of the governors, Ejo, in Benin, in the Midwest then, rang me and to say that, have I heard what has happened? So I said, no, like what? He said, this is what Ojukwu had said. So I said, but, David, is that exactly what we said? Was that what we said? I said, that is not true. And, as a result of this, I said, well, I don't know what Ojukwu means by this, because he has now, created a situation which is not acceptable to the rest of us, and but he's already given the impression that that was the correct thing.
I chose the words deliberately. I used them deliberately. I'm not going to apologize for that, because I went there for effect. I went there as a leader of a people being massacred to win for them as much freedom as I could. Sometimes I will even use words deliberately that could be ambiguous. But it did not change the fact that this is what we agreed at that time, and the normal interpretation of what we agreed were in line with my position. If Gowon says that he got back to Nigeria and then realized that he sold Nigeria down the garden path, that's his own business. It could have been. I'm not going to apologize for using words that he didn't understand. But what we decided, what I got as a decision from Aburi, were exactly what I interpreted when I got back. And they are still today what any normal person would interpret by reading the records.
It was because Ojukwu had really wanted to break away that I was forced in the end to say that no, that cannot happen. Then, if you remember, immediately after the Aburi meeting, about a month later, trying to see whatever we can do to come closer together. What we receive from the other side is like hijacking, and the first hijacking of any aircraft in the world actually took place in Nigeria. I think this may not either have been noticed, because we had to take the matter up with the Interpol meeting. But this was some of the things that he did. Taking over the post office, the railway stock, etc. Really making sure that there is no federal authority at all. So something had to be done, and at every move that we did, he seemed to be, he got to know about it, and he seemed to be a step ahead.
We must be separate politically. We must have an international voice so that should it ever occur again, we can cry out to the world, and the world to listen, that genocide is being committed, that such hideous crimes are being committed here. And we feel that we should be able to call on the help of the world.
We will defend our sovereignty. We will continue to do what is right. While we have sought peace at Niamey and Addis Ababa, the rebels have acquired more sophisticated arms and increased their activity. Obviously, the federal government must act in time to prevent a sharp deterioration in the military situation. Together with my colleagues in the Supreme Military Council and the armed forces, we have therefore resolved that we must now press on with all our might to defeat the rebels militarily and remove all traces of the tyranny and terror, the rebel regime, from the face of this country.
Listening to me, Wole Soyinka, on the BBC World Service, speaking to both General Gowon of the Nigerian Federation and Odumegu Ojukwu of the Biafran separatists, 40 years on from the Civil War. Look at what's happening today in Iraq. When the U.S. went in, and it's acknowledged by them today, they had no post-war strategy.
That's right.
None whatsoever. They just said, come in, occupy, dictate, and of course, in a morass. But you evolve this no victor, no vanquished. And I was curious to know, at what stage, was it towards the end of the war that you began to think what happens after? Because by now, towards the end, it was clear that the Biafrans were militarily defeated.
Well, right from the beginning, I know that it is not a war against the Igbos. So there was no intention of, say, fighting to just defeat the Igbos and to humiliate them. But I saw it more as a fight between, brothers. Yes, you can fight, but you can then, if you are true brothers, in the end, make it up. So right from the beginning, I think the idea of ensuring that it is not a punitive action against the people, we had hoped that in the end, we'll be able to sit back and look back and even joke about it.
He certainly thought the slogan no victor, no vanquished. Put him in line, sort of in the same, not Washington, but Lincoln in America. You know, he was one of the magnanimous victors of our civilization. Did Gawan, when he was saying it, really understand what it meant? No victor, no vanquished. Has he up till today, has he thought back how much did he do to make the victor not a victor? On the other side, we, the vanquished, certainly have so many steps of Nigeria that remind us that we are vanquished.
I meant every word of it. Every word of it. I was really convinced that the only way to assure both sides is to make a statement like that. No victor, no vanquish, but victory for Nigeria and for common sense and for humanity. Now, those were the end, because it at least stopped the suffering, the killings, and now, of course, we know that then we have a very important thing to get down to reconcile ourselves.
That's why I wanted to know how early that that slogan, that was a reality for you, and how early you really, even during the war, saw this as the end to which these violent means must be led. But it doesn't mean that there were no atrocities. I still remember what happened in Asaba, very well documented,
absolutely.
And so on.
I'm sure you probably had what I said years later when I visited Asaba at the palace. These were some of the sort of things that happen, and the commander is not informed. And I felt so bad that years later, when the opportunity presented itself, I had to say that now I have learned only of recent, learned of what had happened, and I could not honestly believe that such a thing could have been done by federal forces. Certainly such a thing should not have happened, but it did happen, and I had to really make a public apology that was certainly not my order. It was unfortunate, and but they have had to forgive, and I think this is what I think all Nigerians have to learn, to forgive one another and to put the past behind the best they can.
It is easy to say this should never have happened, that it was preventable from the beginning, but one would then have to ignore the histories, the complexities of nation becoming. With Nigeria in mind, I still find myself riveted by the events that tore Yugoslavia apart, reflecting on both divergencies and similarities in the history of both nations. Historians will always indulge in tidy theories, but ultimately, every single arena of civil war is virtually a unique planet where the combatants who appeared to speak the same language only yesterday are suddenly bereft of a common tongue. The only language that remains common to both is that of human suffering, wastage, and destruction. They may still cohabit, but a faith in community, the building block for the so-called nation-state, is lost forever. That, for me, remains the real tragedy of civil conflict.